super exciting. It only took, when did we restart this back up? And the whole goal was for both of us with Sabrina to be podcasting.
So this is the first one?
So this is the first one, because then you were sick, then Sabrina was sick, then I pulled in my mom, I pulled in Travis, like we've pulled in all over. And now we've been doing the Q&As, but we have yet to get to actually sit down in the way Heavenly Minded Home Has a Podcast was supposed to be, with it being the three of us.
Finally.
But it's been what? It's like 3 months?
Something
4
like
months
that,
or something.
I guess, yeah.
It's been a while. So
we used to do this.
In context, Brandon, my husband, he does exist. And then Sabrina over there, who you guys know because we've been doing Q&As, but all of us actually all together. Brandon needs to get in here and do this with us more often anyways. He used to be a podcast pro, and he podcasted like every week, all week, and like did all kinds of things.
A few times a week.
Somebody has been slacking and needs to get back to it. And so he's getting roped into this Q&A so that we can tackle more of the kind of marriage relationship questions. I shared a video earlier this week about, I don't even remember what I titled it. Do you remember? I can't remember. I should have remembered that off the top of my head. But
nurturing a Christian marriage?
Yeah.
Oh,
nurturing a Christian marriage, something along those lines. And
we'll link it. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll link it. Sabrina will link it. I don't link anything, but we'll go ahead and link that up there. And I told you guys, if you had like marriage related questions, I think it can be really hard sometimes, because I think with marriage specifically, there's a lot of really big questions, and they're also not the most comfortable to just like go up to someone and be like, hey, answer me this. What do you do, with this? And I think there's a lot of them that we all have our own issues and things that we're working through behind closed doors. And you don't really want to like go up to people and be like, hey, this is what we're struggling with in our home. I mean, it can be a difficult topic.
What's bad in your marriage?
Yeah. What's bad in your marriage? So then I think it becomes very alienating a lot of times. And you kind of just get the idea that everybody else has like a great, wonderful marriage. And then you just assume that like something's wrong with you. Like maybe you're just a bad wife, or your husband really is just that awful, or, whatever it is.
Maybe you're too embarrassed to ask, because everything then looks like everybody else has got it put together, but you're the freak that doesn't have it together. And then you get really embarrassed about it, because like, how does everybody else do this? And I am the only one. And it's almost this weird, shameful, alienated place that you go to. That's exactly the opposite of what we all want.
Right. But I think you have to be able to be vulnerable enough to be like, hey, this is, what's up? Either it's something, that you've gone through or you're working through or whatever. And so, I guess we can just say Brandon and I started dating. I was 14, you were 17. I ended up pregnant, and we got married when I was 17.
It sounds so bad 20. Once you say it now.
I know.
We were in school together, and I was going into my senior year, and you were a freshman.
Well, I was still in 8th grade when we first started dating.
We first met, yeah.
But we were dating. We dated for a year. Yeah, okay, I was in 8th grade. You were in 11th. See, we don't even know how old we were. We were in 11th grade. But then we got married, and so we are 19 and a half years married. But we've definitely struggled with a whole host of things. We both profess to be Christians. We were dating in Christian school, but we're obviously not living the life, considering I ended up pregnant at 17 and we were getting married in Vegas. So like, obviously not quite walking the walk. We really struggled. I would say the first decade of our marriage was awful. And it's only by God's grace that we are still here, because we both did everything in our own power to destroy our marriage and each other and ourselves and everything in between. So thankful for the Lord's grace and all of that. We went through really big struggles where I got really convicted, and we had a long battle over my wanting you to be a real Christian, me trying to grow, me giving up. We had, a lot of struggle and issue with that when it comes to the spiritual side of things. And then we also went through a part where I got really convicted, but stuck to my convictions. And then we have, the testimony of how that really kind of brought you to truly give yourself to Christ. And then now being in ministry together and all of the things that we do. So I feel like we, in the past 20-ish years of being together, have like really hit a big scope of things on like the spectrum of life. So not that we obviously think that we like know it all, have it all. Our marriage isn't perfect. We have our own struggles and our own whatevers, just like everyone else. But
yeah, Heidi's not perfect despite what everybody on the internet thinks.
I'm as perfect as I claim to be.
Yeah, which
is not at all.
Yeah, so like make that the first time that you've mentioned that in public.
Yeah.
No, she's not perfect. I'm not perfect.
I'm positive that in one of your videos, you said that you are a sinner married to a sinner, because
I'm sure
everybody is a sinner.
Yep.
It's like universal in that way. So you can't just point the finger at one part of your couple. You are like, you're both the same thing. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I definitely was a lot worse though. I'll take the blame on that. I definitely was a lot worse.
Sorry, our vacuum is running and it's like sitting at our door making, I'm sure, a ton of noise, and I'm trying to move it on the app and now the app is frozen. I was like, oh, I'll be real slick and just move it real quick. Sorry, everybody. It's just a little noisy. No, but that is it.
My chair is still lower than yours. I just noticed this. Doesn't matter.
Maybe you're sinking. But I think that is such a big part of it, and remembering, you know, I'm sure my husband is completely annoyed at what a sinful wretch his wife is. Just like as a wife, I get really annoyed at what a sinful wretch my husband is, right? Like, spoiler alert, neither of us are perfect. Both of us do things. And, you know, maybe one day, I mean, he has learned to keep up on his laundry now. I didn't think that was ever going to be something when we first got married. And he now usually has his laundry picked up before I do. So if that can happen, anything can happen.
I don't remember a time where you ever had your laundry squared away.
Well, maybe not squared.
Yeah, see, it's not.
I hate putting it away. I will wash, dry, fold all day long. But
here's the thing is, even though people don't see this or think this, but Heidi and I are like a lot the same. There's a lot of similarities there. There's certain things that aren't similar, but then there's certain things that are, especially with stuff like that. I think we both are like, have that ADD to where we're like doing so many different things at once. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of let things pile up. And then we realize, oh, hey, there's laundry all over our room, literally. And it's not just mine.
And that's why I love a minimalist wardrobe. So at least my amount of clothing is very small.
It's better now.
Anyways, we're getting totally distracted here with things. Let's go ahead and let Sabrina kick us off with our actual Q&A, and not just Heidi and Brandon ramble for 10 minutes because we're not used to podcasting anymore.
Yeah.
So I figured we'd start with your guys' hobbies and what you guys, each of you, like to do in your free time. Especially if it's not putting away laundry. What do you do? So we know what you don't do. You don't put away laundry efficiently and on time. So what do you do with your free time? People must know.
So I think that question is a neat question because I saw that somebody, we've gotten it a few different times, but I saw that one person specifically asked, what do I personally do, like for myself, like what are my hobbies and things that I do? And I had to kind of chuckle a little bit because I feel like everything that we do is kind of my hobby. Yeah. Because I am Sabrina, and I clarified this. I am more of a high energy person. So I always have things that I'm doing, pursuing, I don't know, whatever. I love cleaning the house and working on things. I love home projects. I love gardening. I love all of our homestead stuff and bringing in more animals and figuring out fencing and like all of those things. Like I love that stuff. I love going to thrift stores. I love just visiting and like the things like we do together. We love doing like family nights. I feel like we have lots of things like that, but it was kind of funny and made us chuckle because basically the answer is all of my hobbies are all the things you all see, because I kind of steamroll everyone, and then everyone is kind of subject to my hobbies. So it's not that I just don't get time for myself. I've somehow very creatively crafted a life unbeknownst to me.
I love your wording on this.
Everyone is now subject to what I find lovely.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt. I have such strong desires that I've roped everybody that I can see into my fantasy world where I get to do the fun things.
That's like the most accurate statement I've ever heard.
Sorry. Yeah. Continue.
And I never really thought about it until like that question came up, and I was like, I read it to him, and he was like, everything I think we do is your hobby. Yeah. So the real question would be, do you have any hobbies?
I don't have time for any hobbies because of you. She keeps me busy. Like it doesn't stop. But no, I think I do. We enjoy a lot of the same things. I think we've been together for so long that we do enjoy a lot of the same things. I personally used to love skateboarding. I can't do it anymore. Just old and injuries and things like that. I can't do it as much, actually at all. But Heidi won't let me get a skateboard. No. So maybe. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway.
Pick something else.
I do. I love, I enjoy working outdoors. I love yard work. Just, you'll find me in my spare time, probably doing that. I do love, studying scripture and theology. I became a big passion of mine recently. And I kind of just like, being an old, just mountain person now. I think I've just changed so much. From
the punk kid from Southern California to now he's just like little mountain man out here.
Like I enjoy it. I do. So, but yeah, no, I mean, really, time for hobbies with living with Heidi, it's almost non-existent.
Think of all the
self-admittedly
things you've gotten to do here lately.
Oh yeah, I've gotten to do
many things lately.
So many things. Yeah.
And everybody ignore the fact that we like this is my hobby. My hobby would be fixing up areas around the house and making them work better for a family. Like we need to have a better solution we're in obviously the HMH co-op, our kids are, new classes starting next month, you guys. I'm so excited for what we have coming out. The Bible classes, the reading classes. We needed an extra space for our kids to be able to do classes because all of our kids are in co-op classes. We have like classes going everywhere. So I was like, we need to set up in our closet. We have an open closet that he was going to make a little office space, but then we ended up moving him in here. So let's still turn it into an office space, but it can be an office space that the kids can use for class specifically because it's quiet. They're back here in our room and they can really focus, right? Because there's not much stuff going on in the back part of our house. It's hard when you have people talking in screens all over our house. It can get really difficult sometimes between me filming, their classes, you teaching. And so that meant we needed to find a desk and so we could set everything up in there. So as luck would have it, we stopped at the store yesterday after a doctor's appointment and I found a desk that was cute and they had one that was marked 50% off. Looked totally new, like it had never been opened. And it was the only one out of all of them. And it was 50% off. It was a great deal. So we're like, let's scoop this up. So this morning, in between feeding animals, making breakfast, getting kids in co-op classes, all of the cleaning I'm supposed to be doing that I have yet to actually get to, and it's 4:00 in the afternoon. But I decided, why don't I just go ahead and open up this desk to see if I could like whip it together really quick. This desk is comprised of about 800 different pieces. I'll try to take a picture and we can like overlay it over this because our bedroom right now is currently our entire king size bed, the floor, like everywhere you look, there are now bits and pieces of this desk, which I don't have time to even do now because I need to do biblical womanhood with the girls after this. So now our teenage son, he walked by and was like, are you struggling with that desk, Mom? Like I just walked by your room and I saw like, it looks like a desk like exploded in our room. And he goes, so could you not get it? Like, what happened? I was like, yeah, no, I got started and I got to about page 4 and I realized, like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this today. But now it means our whole room is just.
If anybody's wondering why I haven't done it yet, I haven't had time.
No, he's been on.
And I also have been putting together Heidi projects all week. I haven't had a minute to myself all week. I've wanted to do things this week.
But I
love you, so it's okay.
He told me, he was like, I'll get to the desk later. Like, I'm trying to do, and I have to teach today. Like, we have all these other things going on. I was like, oh, I'll just see if I can do it real quick.
So if I had $1 for everything that you ripped open and you were going to do, and you said, nope, we wouldn't have to work anymore.
That is true. So that's what we mean by stuff like that. So now our teenage son is finishing up co-op class and then getting in there and building a desk because he's awesome. And I've made a mess.
I'm positive that in last week's Q&A, there might have been a moment where you needed to turn around and address your daughter talking to you through the hole of the door, telling you about how your husband couldn't find the bicycle pedals.
Yes.
That's because he was assembling more Heidi projects that she ripped open and left because she had more important things like our podcast. But it is very, very regularly something that ends up happening.
Yep.
So I do see Brandon as the finisher of the projects. Heidi's like the starter of the projects.
Yep.
And then Brandon like comes behind her and just like wraps them all up and finishes them and does all the finite.
That's so accurate.
The actual part of it. Yeah.
That is the most accurate explanation I've ever heard of our relationship. Honestly, yes. Like she starts it and I have to finish it.
Yeah. I can totally see this. Like genuinely, yes.
That's very accurate.
I'm sharing hobbies that you didn't know you had.
Sure.
I see it kind of like when you volunteer your spouse to do something and they get to have a new project or a new hobby. They have volunteered for it. Oh yeah, I see how this plays out.
Yeah. So that's the answer to that.
Okay. So somebody else wants you to get deeper into your story. I'm going to read how they worded it.
Okay.
Where you gave that little synopsis in the beginning of just a little micro blurb. I'd like to know your story about how your faith grew first, Heidi, and how your husband's faith then grew.
I think this is a really big topic and a really important one. And I'm sure there's lots that we can dive into in this, like in future things. We've talked about, ways that we could do some different things. Even Brandon, sharing his whole testimony side of it, me sharing my whole testimony side of it. Like if that's something that could help someone, we'd be happy to do so. But, in that synopsis, we kind of just went through this where, like I said, we both come from Christian homes, like we both would say that like our MySpace profiles said we were Christians, but then his was covered in Marilyn Manson and mine was covered in whatever nonsense I was in. You know what I mean? Like you look at the stuff and it's like the fruit wasn't there.
Actually, mine said that I was a Jesus loving Satanist. That's where I came from.
Is that what it said?
Yeah, do you don't remember that?
No.
But that was for sure.
Actually what it said.
Yeah, Jesus loving Satanist. But it was because the shock factor.
No, you wanted that face that I just made.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
yeah.
That is such a different human than you are now. And I
know. Sabrina doesn't even.
She's like, ew.
Oh, you should have seen me.
So, something
that was a piece of work.
Yeah, something that really happened is we would go through periods, and especially, we got married at 17, had our son. We moved into our first apartment on my 18th birthday. So we were really young, trying to figure out how to live on our own, how to be married, how to have a kid, like how to do all of the pieces. And we did a horrible job at all of it. And I know I felt really convicted in the way of like, I know I'm not necessarily like walking the walk as I should, but I have this kid that I'm responsible for and I want my son to know. And so like, I was always really big at still trying to be active in church. We moved from California to North Carolina, knew nobody out here. And I would try to find churches. I remember I like joined a mom group and asked people what churches they go to. And I would drag him to churches, and it never went well, especially when you're dragging your husband who doesn't want to be up early on his day off, is missing a race and being drugged to some obnoxious church and forced to hang out with people that like he would never hang out with ever. And I was constantly doing that and constantly causing strife and problems. And I didn't really know what to do, but I felt that we should be doing something. And so eventually I even stopped asking you, and I would just go to churches on my own. We basically wouldn't discuss it. I would get up and get ready very quietly because it would be an issue of argument. And when me and the kids came home from church, we would just basically move into our like relaxing Sunday afternoon and not even talk about anything type of a thing for a while. And then we went through different periods where I got more convicted and would start to share more things. And even you would kind of tug a little bit. And then before we knew it, I think that's when you were really struggling with, I'm not worthy of being saved. Like you really, really struggled for a long time. And so then I would kind of fall back off. So the more like you would pull away, then eventually I would give in because it wasn't worth the fight. It wasn't worth the argument. It wasn't worth the whatever. And so I would just, I would fall off. And then it was about 10-ish years ago.
I think, wasn't it when we lived in the Mooresville house?
Yeah.
We refer to our homes because like this is the longest we've ever lived somewhere. Because
this is our 16th home. And so we've been here for like, we've been here for 10 years.
10 years. Yeah. No, it's been longer than 10 years.
Yeah.
Just a little bit longer than 10 years.
We're not very good at timelines, but eventually I finally got really convicted and I was like, I don't care. Like, this is so important to me. And if he's not going to get on my train, then that's between him and the Lord. And it's not my job to drag him onto the train. Like if he doesn't want to come, that's fine. But like, I'm not getting off because you won't get on the train. And I didn't understand that in a biblical sense. Like, it's not like now knowing so much more about scripture, I'm like, oh yeah, we can absolutely see biblically where we submit to God first and like we could go through the whole thing. But I just felt that way. I just felt like this is so important to me. I don't care what he says. Like, I need to know what scripture says. I need to read the Bible cover to cover. This has to be a priority for me. Like, I have to do differently. And so I started doing that, but I didn't argue. Like, I didn't want to argue with you about it. This is what I'm doing. I'm sitting down every day. I'm reading my Bible. I'm doing this. Now, sometimes he would make snarky comments or things like whatever, like, oh, you in your Bible again? Are you busy again? Like there'd be like the whatever. Really? But then you did a few times. But then what was funny, and that was him feeling convicted.
I don't remember that, but right. I mean, I wouldn't put it past me.
but it was just little things, because then I would be like, you know what I read today? Do you remember this? Like, we went to Bible school together. Like, I don't remember this ever being taught. And then these conversations would open up and these things would come, and then you lead it from here. What happened to you?
Yeah. I, like you said, though, I really don't, I remember that time specifically. I don't remember like giving you a hard time, but like I said, I wouldn't put it past me because, well, what I remembered is, to me, that was what was different, was the fact that you wanted to read the Bible and you were doing that religiously, like we should. And I was like, oh, wow, like she's doing this. And like, that, instead of trying to take me to some crazy church, which, when you're young before, we definitely, I'm not a mega church person at all. And that was all, of course, I think young people, I think that's when you're first coming to the faith, that's probably what's more appealing. And that's probably. And
a good note here is we were in the Charlotte area, which anybody knows Elevation, things like that. I mean, that's where it all started. And so all the churches that even weren't Elevation around it were trying to like mimic that, because that's what was,
Oh yeah. And and I started really I had legitimate issues, though. It wasn't like a disdain for God or anything like that. mine were legitimate issues in the way of, we went, the one church, I don't need to get into all this, but the one church that literally had a blessing plate, or what was it, that literally every time during the service, no matter when somebody would ever put like an offering in the box, they would literally stop the service and shout. And I was just like, are you like, what is this?
It's like if somebody walked quietly to the back of the room and like put an offering in, the pastor would see it and be like, whoa, and they all had like a thing they would do. We were like,
and so that was just one of them, and I won't go into the rest of them, but yeah, instead of trying to drag me to a church like that, you started reading. And then, like you said, I mean, that's where it started, was those conversations. You would say things and I was like, wait a minute, what? I don't remember that. Like, I feel like I know the Bible, okay, and I don't remember any of this. And so it got me interested, but it really was seeing her dedication to reading scripture and her changing and getting excited over it. And so then, and as Heidi said, for a long while, I struggled with knowing that I needed to clean my life up and I needed to follow the Lord. And like I said, I didn't walk the walk. I believe Jesus existed. I went to church my whole life. My family is, I come from a Christian family. But I knew, and I knew that I wasn't on the right path. I knew I needed to, like I said, clean myself up. But I wasn't ready. I plain wasn't ready. I was working through a bunch of things, I guess. I don't really remember my thought process until recently, with what you were talking about with 10, 11 years ago or whatever. But knowing, I felt that feeling of going, okay, now it's time. Now it is time. Now it's time to get yourself together. She's getting herself together. Now it's time for you to get your life together and in order. And so I started doing the same thing. I started reading. I started looking into some of these things that she was saying. And I was just blown away. I was like, that's in there? This is awesome. I was like, that's what it actually says. And so I did the same for a while. And then, honestly, I think my motivation behind this was, at the time we were doing weddings. We owned our wedding business. And we did all kinds of stuff. Not only did we do coordinating, but we did, event setups, and we had chandeliers even that we would rent out. We had a whole rental. Design. Yeah, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And we noticed that one of the needs consistently, obviously, at a wedding is an officiant. And there were a couple times that there were officiants that didn't show up or were not good or whatever else. And I'm like, man, that I should figure out how to be an officiant or something. And we did this. That could
be a service we could offer, and we make good money.
Did this one wedding, and of course, this is when I was completely biblically ignorant.
Danny Caleb.
Yes,
I knew. Yes. I knew that was the
wedding. We did this one wedding, and their officiant literally did one of these 24-hour become an ordained minister in 24 hours. And I was like,
in his flame shirt. Yeah.
I mean, to tell you who this guy was, they nicknamed him the Streaking Deacon, wasn't it? Yeah. Wasn't that his nickname? The Streaking Deacon. I don't know why, but I don't care to know. But anyway, I saw that. I was like, dude, I totally am gonna do that. I'm gonna go do that. So that's where I started. I started looking up how to become an officiant or how to become a pastor or whatever, to minister, just to do weddings. And so I found a couple things, and even looking at them, I was like, this kind of seems kind of cheesy, TBN stuff, like Kenneth Copeland, just cheap, certificate mills and things like this. And so even then I was like, I don't think so. And then that was when I stumbled into a seminary. That was a all online seminary. It was donation based. They had a very cool story. that was very appealing to me at the time. And so I went through that, and I started classes. I went to Heidi.
Oh, yeah.
I got ahead of myself.
So he goes, he comes up
ahead.
to me. We're getting ready to go into off season for us, for our business. So we have some free time because we were doing like 100 weddings a year. It was a lot. And we're going into off season. And so he comes up and he goes, hey, I want to do something, but like, I need, you know, it's a really big deal before I start this. Like, I need to have your support. We need to be on the same page. Like, I'm going to need, you know, you in this. We're sitting at the dining room table, and I had the dining room in what is now Travis's room. And I'm sitting there doing stuff. And I'm like, okay, we're going into off season. Like, we got some free time coming up. Like, what do you want to do? And he goes, I'm going to enroll in seminary. And I remember sitting there and being like, I was always the more academic one. I was principal's honor roll, top GPA, top of my class. The whole thing went straight to college. He was not. He was like ditched Bible class every day, partied way too much. Like he never once took a foreign language. You took business math all through high school. Like, he was that guy. He was not Mr. Academic. Not that you're not intelligent. You just were not like academics. Were not.
Yeah, no, I just weaseled my way through school.
Yeah. And so he comes to me and he goes, I'm going to enroll in seminary. And I looked at him because I was like, sweetheart, do you not know what the word seminary means? Because that's like a school. Like, I mean, it's a really in-depth school. And the subject matter is scripture, Bible, theology, like all of these things that, like, he had been warming up, and I had been seeing that in different things, and I was making changes, and we were kind of moving in that same way. But I'm like, are you sure that you know what seminary is? Because I think that you think that word means something that it doesn't mean, and I don't think you're on the same page here, was my response. Like, I was genuinely that, like, come again?
This is true. Yeah, you were like, and I was like, no, seriously, like, I want to do this. I want to get an education. I want to do this. And so I did. I enrolled, and I did. I just ate it up. I ate it up. I blasted through.
You were putting in like 60 to 70 hours a week.
Yeah, just
like you graduated so far ahead of the schedule because it's self-paced, but they have an outline of like what you should do. And you were obsessed.
I was. I was. Yeah, I ate up a program that normally, I'll get to it, but it normally takes, I think it was like a year and a half, something like this.
Keep talking.
But sorry, the dog's coming in now. Oh, look, it's Betty. Anyway, I ate it up, and I just loved it. And I kept, Heidi saw just an immediate change. It was the Lord just completely just opened my heart and my eyes to be able to receive everything that I was taking in. And I mean, it just clicked. Things just were coming. And that's why I always say that my understanding was never my own, because all of my biblical knowledge and understanding now and everything, it didn't come from me. It was from the Lord. I mean, I'm not super sensational, so I'm not going to say that, like, the Holy Spirit talked to me and opened. I'm not making fun of that. Please don't think that I am, but I'm just saying that I'm not one of those people like that. But it did. And as soon as I started, I mean, it was clear as day. And I go, this makes sense. Finally, a lot of things make sense. Then I got to the point, though, where I was going to have to go further into this and do more classes and start getting involved with a local church to become ordained. And I'm to be an ordained pastor. And I'm like, I don't want to be a pastor, though. I just wanted education. So I dropped out, and I continued my education on my own, but without the of wanting to do this, to become a pastor. I just wanted education. And so, that's literally how it started. It was just one day I decided to do this, and the Lord opened my heart and eyes, and that was it. Ever since then, I haven't stopped. Obviously things have been rough recently we've had some family tragedies and everything over the past few years that took a big hit on the ministry. But other than that, I mean, I still haven't stopped. I still am continuing education too, and thank God involved in a wonderful community with a bunch of theologians that can help me continue that education as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, that's if there should be a ton of encouragement in that, because I see the comments too that you receive about women who are struggling, and like you said, I'll go into this more and tell more of the story at a different time, but I see so many people struggling with their husbands, and they're so worried and they just don't know what to do. And I want to say, like, I was one. I am one of those. Like I've been there. And keep praying, keep moving forward. The biggest thing is seeing Heidi and how it changed her. But instead of wanting, like I said, Heidi and I are a lot alike in some ways. So I think there's a natural competitiveness to us, where we try to compete with one another and we try to outdo one another. And I saw that kind of laying off, like I'm not trying to come at you with this. I'm gonna be calm about it. I'm gonna do it. And I said, wow, like this is completely different than who you are.
Because if anybody thinks that I'm on YouTube saying the things I say because I'm just the most submissive, gentle, and meek.
Oh no.
You guys don't even understand how hard I work. And that was it, because I am not a naturally, but I'll throw myself under the bus. I am not a naturally submissive spirit. I am the most like steamroll you in your face, take charge. I know what I'm talking about. Sit down and shush because I've got this. I don't need you, independent woman. Like me in my flesh would and used to run hog wild down that direction.
It's a good thing a lot of the women that I've loved in my life were exactly like that, so I know how to deal with you. And because my grandmother was like this, my sister is like this.
And luckily some of us come to repentance. And so that's what it was. And so that was without even really understanding when First Peter, Peter in 1 Peter 3, when he says, it is by your conduct that you can win an unbelieving spouse to Christ. And that's really what it was the more that I was transformed in the spirit. And I was like, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to drag you. I'm not going to beat you over the head.
And it wasn't like that was what I was waiting for. I had no idea
how it happened.
It's just how it happened. And I go, oh, wow, this is something that's different. And that's what being different. And even if you've been the most humble wife and it still isn't working, keep going. You just have to be able to shine that light to others and show others no matter what. And eventually, something will click. It's just, that's the Lord's promise. It will happen. Just stay faithful, keep praying, and keep setting that example. So
hopefully that answers.
Yeah, that's a long. I think we almost took the whole podcast time on that one question.
No, that was a great amount of time to cover it.
Okay, good.
Okay, do you want my input?
Always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So.
Sorry.
As you were talking, I wrote out little bullet points. Okay.
She's great at this. Don't you love it? She makes notes as we go, and then she has it all pulled together. This is why we have you. This is why you get me the big bucks.
Okay. So to start with, Heidi, as Brandon was talking, and you guys were like, "Oh, I don't remember saying those things." Heidi would obviously remember those things because they were her personal battles. They were what she was being attacked by in that moment. So she remembers how hard that battle was. And to you were just the vessel being used as the hardener for Heidi. It was not actually you. It was just an action that you did that was the test for Heidi and the battle for her. So she remembers the battles. Because that's the part she's supposed to remember to tell other women, hey, this battle is going to come up. You are going to hear snarky comments from your husband. He's not even going to remember it in 5 years.
Yeah, he won't.
Genuine.
He won't, because they're not real. It's just a circumstance that is being used to harden you and test you and refine the wife. It is a refining period. So it is not a bad thing that Brandon doesn't remember saying these things. It's not bad. It's actually how it's supposed to be. Heidi remembers it because it was hard, and Brandon doesn't because it was just him being used at the moment to test her.
Yeah, no, you're right. 100%. 100%.
I think that Heidi won you over by solely this is going to sound so selfish, and I think this is why us wives do not do this we don't think of it in this way. I think what Heidi did was she focused solely on her. No longer did you matter, because she can't control you. She can't save you. She can't drag the horse to the water, but the horse isn't going to drink. It's his choice to drink or not. She could drag you to church. It's your choice whether or not you get saved. But the harder she pulled, the more you were like, no, absolutely not. And until she loosened her reins and said, okay, I have the wrong focus. I need to armor myself. I need to beef myself up so much in this word that nothing else matters. And he is going to be moth to the flame, drawn to me. Because later you said that one day you just woke up and did it. And I'm like, so you think?
Yeah.
So funny. Heidi has been praying for you and paving the way. And yes, to you, that's absolutely what it feels like. So I'm thinking of this in like a parent-child relationship as well. So like it works with your spouse, but it also could work with your children.
Right.
Because you don't know where they're at. You just have to exude it and shine it through, because that is actually what you're seeing.
Yep.
You're seeing the light of, okay, you said that it's the competition that you thought was getting you to compete with Heidi. Oh, I see. She's succeeding, and I want to succeed. I don't actually think that might be what your human understanding kind of like put together, but I actually think that is how God designed us. Yeah. I think that in that moment you saw I'm pretty sure it's in Corinthians, and it's the vase and the cracks that you can see God through, and you can like see Jesus through the cracks, and you have to be so full of it that it just shines out of the broken vessels, right? I think that Heidi was such a broken, shining vessel that you saw the light through it and went, what is that? Why don't I have that? Not, I'm going to compete with that, but I want what she has. How do I get that? Mm-hmm. And that was salvation.
Right.
She was saved. She had accepted it. She had become it. She had started to walk it out. And because she started to walk it out, you visually looked at her and you went, whoa, this is different. I don't know what to do. I'm a little uneasy because it's not the same. So you threw shots. And then you were like, oh, wait, this is actually the new normal. Okay, she was so full of God that I'm going to have to jump on this God wagon too, because, wow, she's actually really excited about this. Mm-hmm. And she shared her excitement, and that's how she got you to read it and to do it and to invest in it. It was not, you should read this. You should go to church. Come with me. Let's do this. I am the man. I will lead this family. I will do it. No. She was like, cool story, husband. If you don't want to be the leader, that's okay. I will temporarily be the leader, like over here. And then when you're ready to step up, I will sit back and you can step up and take the reins. It's just a temporary position she held.
Yeah.
I also wrote down that Kenneth Copeland is the Elvis of the church world.
Yes. Very good.
You were talking about that cheesy Christian thing, and I thought of like the cheesy Elvis with this jumpsuit and the guys who pretend to be him, and they're like officiating. And I pictured Kenneth Copeland in a jumpsuit like Elvis.
It's a white jumpsuit.
It's the best.
Oh, that's the best. I have to ask AI to create that image. Create Kenneth Copeland in Elvis's jumpsuit. How did we get here?
This is possibly the best use of AI I've ever heard of.
Oh goodness. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, I mean that's completely accurate. That's great. Yeah.
So it's really interesting because I just glanced down to see what the next question was.
Uh-oh.
Can you please share guidance on how to navigate a marriage where one person is walking more closely with the Lord and the other is not? Also, how should we guide children when you have a marriage where one person is seeking the Lord alone? Do you see how all of these questions are all the same? And then the next one, advice for a spouse who's growing in faith when the other is not. Yes, that's needed. I'm really hearing a cry for women who are trying to lead their houses while they feel like their husband is not, and what to do about that. And I think that is a topic that we should address in and of itself in a whole podcast on what that one looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like our whole ministry could be based on that topic alone, and we would never go a day without something to work on. Like, honestly.
We could talk forever on just how to live. It doesn't matter if it's your spouse or your neighbor or the other coworker. It doesn't matter if it's a person you see in the bus stop. You have to live so intensely for the Lord. You have to walk it and live it so intensely that no matter who is seeing you, they see God's presence radiating out of you. They just see it, and they're like, in the same way, like, oh, what's different about you? Huh?
I mean, we love that in the testimony during COVID, right? When we never once freaked out, we weren't covering ourselves in masks, we weren't losing our marbles and stockpiling, and we lived the most like genuinely normal. Like our kids were like, I've noticed nothing different in our lives, you know. But that was such a testimony when I would be out at the grocery store, mask free, smiling and chatting with everybody, and they were like, "Why are you so calm right now?" Right? Like that was that example of like, I know where my salvation is. I know where I'm living. Like, I mean, you have those things, but I think that is so big in marriage. And really that is that key of, we have to understand submission. And I think that there's a lot of talk about what we are as women to be submissive, but there's a lot of misunderstanding in that because our submission is to God first.
Right.
And yes, our husband, then us. Like there is an order, God's order here, but we're still to submit to the Lord first. And so if your husband is an unbeliever, or maybe he's professing to believer and but he's not really, do you still step out and lead your children? Yes, 1,000%. Yes. Even when your husband gets cranky, even when whatever the things are that happen, like, you stand before the Lord and you give an account for what you did and how you raised those children that he entrusted to you. So you better be living it. You better be teaching it. You better be talking about it. I mean, you better be doing all the things, right? Deuteronomy 6 tells us from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed, when we're at home, when we're out and about, like it should be everywhere, even with a spouse who is in unbelief or not really there. So I think that's a huge key factor. Should you still be doing all the things even if you're dealing with a spouse who isn't? this is a big one to say, maybe you put in far more time studying your Bible, listening to sermons, going to whatever the things are that you're currently doing. We have to also remember, I think that's that line of humility and grace, though, is if we sat here and we just compared, it's not an apples to apples comparison. Brandon doesn't come up each day and go, I clocked in this much time in my Bible today. What's your number? Right? Like it's not a thing. If I walk around going, I've already listened to 3 sermons today and he's still sitting over there scrolling through Facebook, right? Like then it comes in there where like, why did you do this? Or why, so I think that's not a fair apples to apples comparison to go and do.
I think that's the kind of judgment that the Bible says not to do.
Right. It does.
Judge their heart, because on the outside, they could be looking very plain and blank. But maybe internally, they are actually crying out to God.
Maybe.
And their heart is pouring out to God. But you would never know that because they're...
Yeah. And maybe not. Maybe your husband is genuinely not doing what he should be doing and you are. Like maybe that is the case. But that's, again, not we don't want to be, I think we just got this sheep and she's a few years old and
another one of my hobbies.
Yeah, another one.
Actually, I love it.
He's actually loving it.
I love it. See,
I have him so wrapped up in my hobbies that he's like, this was such a great idea. I'm so glad I chose to do this. And I'm like, you're right, honey. You are so glad. I'm so glad we listened to what you suggested. Sabrina, she mentioned something to me.
I never said I suggested it.
But that's what's so funny.
Yeah.
She said something the other day and I was like, why didn't you tell me this? And she goes, because your husband's been adamant for the past like 5 years that I've known you that you're not getting sheep. So I never mentioned it to you. I was like,
she did convince me because I was against it at first.
But I think of this sheep. We got this sheep and she's not used to, the person who had her was not taking care of her. And she's not used to having loving affection from people. So we've been having to really work with her for the past week since we've had her to get her to trust us and be okay. And we're putting a lot of work into her. But like, I think of the first day is we're trying to walk her into the safety of our barn, her new space. And we've got it all set up for her and all of this. And we just want her to come in and get some fresh water and like have some food and all of these like lovely, wonderful things for our little, prissy sheep that we're like, here, you have everything you need. I'll fluff your pillow. Like we want to be like that. And we're having to like drag her, push her, like it's awful. And so now every once in a while she'll start to pull. And we've learned that if we just loosen it up, give her some space, she kind of like works through whatever her freak out is. And then she's like, okay, I'm following you. I can trust you. It's okay. And we start back up. But if we keep pulling, she just backs up even more. And I feel like it's the same way where maybe your spouse isn't there. Maybe he's not doing the things. Maybe he's not leading like a biblical, godly father and husband should be. But I think there's 2 key components. Well, maybe 3 key components to this. Changed my mind. 3. 1, you submit to the Lord first and foremost. So you keep doing all your things full throttle because you got to answer for you, not for him, for you. And we're told specifically that our conduct, not our, dragging him, kicking and screaming, our conduct, our example is what can win them over. 2 would be you keep leading your kids. You keep discipling them. You keep teaching them. You keep praying. You keep all of the things 1,000%. And what was my 3rd point?
I don't know.
I know. My 3rd point was, darn it.
Ooh.
It was so good. Oh, I can't say darn it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
Too close.
Cock-a-doodle.
Yeah. Oh, it was so good.
I can't help you there. I have got cat hair all over my.
That's because cats were so.
Before we started. So if anybody's wondering why I'm scratching it's because of the cats. So don't
you
comment.
try to answer the question. Yeah, don't.
Please don't comment because I have more ticks than Heidi does, touching her hair and
cursing apparently.
Yeah, cursing.
Okay, do you want to answer the question? I'll try to remember this thing. Dang it, it was such a good one.
I was kind of waiting for you to get to your 3rd point. I was like, all right, good.
I'm not the one who usually does this. This is you who usually does this.
Yeah.
So what's the question again?
Just saying. You are
talking about?
Women struggling with being school leaders.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember it. Okay,
Good
I'm so sorry.
goodness.
I'm so sorry. I remember it. The third point, like the most important point here, and it kind of answers, I know, a question that we had too. See, this is why usually I can start and stop my thing, but you guys, I'm not going to edit any of this. You get the full thing. You have to know when to leave a void. This is so big because sometimes there's a spot where our husbands are unbelievers or they are not like walking the walk. And so we do fill in parts. I was actually just listening to John Barnett today in a video I sent to someone that was confused about head covering. And I sent this thing and he did such a great job in the way he explained this because he was talking about how women are told to be quiet at church and go to their husbands. And he goes, and you know what this does? Because men so easily will become passive. Women, right? That's our curse. We desire to rule over our husbands. We desire it. Like it doesn't take much for us women to be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Let me tell you what it is, right? Like,
tell me about it.
Yeah, we all do it. And men are too quick to be passive and just be like, I don't know, she's got it, right? That's why moms do all the things, right? It's not that dads can't change a diaper. It's that we are like, no, we do it like this. And we, step in or whatever, right? And so you see that. But yet we see in scripture that it says women in church, instead of stopping and interrupting and doing all of this, like go talk to your husband about it first. And then, we come back and can discuss. That then kind of forces the husband to have to be discipled, right, to have to be in his Bible, to have to be studying and looking and prompting him of like, hey, you have to step up. And so can there be times and ways that the wife might kind of step in a little bit more in this way? Yes. And I believe that's in support of her husband. Somebody also asked the question, what about dealing with a spouse who struggles with mental issues? And I said, wow, like Brandon has chronic depression. He struggles with massive depressive episodes. And if I didn't step in some of these points, our house would spiral really, really quickly and pretty crazy, right? Like it would go from 0 to 100 real quick, not in a good way. And I don't see that as my trying to like subdue you. I see it as you're my buddy, you're my person. And when you're struggling and you're hurting, that's my time to step in and help you and to help there. And then once he starts feeling better and he's worked through what he's dealing with, it's my job then to be like, here you go, pal. Like I'm out. We're right back at it. And I think that's just that third key element. So yes, like we need to understand submission, submit to the Lord first and foremost, regardless of what our husband's saying. Number 2, we need to keep teaching and training our children. Absolutely. That is our duty. But then number 3 is we need to know when to step back, let go, or when to honestly just leave a void. So that way your husband can fill it. He can step in. And like somebody said, she's like, if that means that the power bill doesn't get paid and the power gets shut off because he never got on and did it, and that was supposed to be his thing, then hey, let the power get shut off and live and learn and don't hold it against him and don't, talk down and belittle him for it. But let there be a void. Let him start stepping in, before you eat. Hey, hon, you want to lead us all in prayer? Like let those things be in there and come, because I think that's another part of it of, we have certain things that could I absolutely take over and do when it comes to certain, and there's things that I do with the kids with the homeschool and other things, but then there's other areas that's dad's department. I mean, even at night, there's been a couple nights where you've fallen asleep early. And so I do our family prayer and all of our kids get like, this is like, you're saying like dad says the evening prayer. And I'm like, I know, but dad's been sick and he's sleeping. So like, I will just do it. And the kids are like, why don't we just keep waiting up and see if he wakes up? And I'm like, it's late. Like it's bad. Like, we're not just going to sit here all night to hope dad wakes up. Like, and I'm not going to go wake him up, but it's just stuff like that literally, because we let there be a void that he then could step in to fill. And now it's become so normal that me saying the bedtime prayer like weirds out all of our kids, and they get so like, they every time they're always like, and they'll tell you, Dad, you fell asleep and Mom prayed. Gosh, guys.
And I do, I mean, just for an encouragement for everybody listening and the ladies listening that are going through this is I guess I should go backwards a little bit. That yes, I didn't want to become a pastor, but God had different plans for me.
That's what makes it so funny.
And I am a pastor now, and I do teach. So yes, that's what makes everything so funny. But I can't tell you how many times I deal with this. Like, I have dealt with this topic that I would say thousands of times within 4 years that I've been teaching. And I know exactly where you're at. I've heard it. I know, and it breaks my heart when I hear that, because like I said, I mean, I know from experience how this goes. So, you know, if you want what it's like from the other side, just keep going. And don't expect, you know, this glorious outcome right away, because as you continue to do this, that pull is going to get harder, and it's going to be more intense. And yeah, your husband's probably going to get more angry, but just keep going. And like Heidi said, it's absolutely your duty then, if your husband won't do it, to lead your family spiritually. Maybe, but you know, like, you know, again, as Heidi said, take it easy, because they don't know. I didn't know what being a spiritual leader in my home meant, and what I have no clue. Me not wanting to go to a crazy church had nothing to do with not wanting me not wanting to lead my family. But then, of course, now I learn, I go, oh, wow, I should have been this all along. You know, so you learn, and it's a process. It takes time. But I mean, you know, scripture tells us, 1 Corinthians 7:16 tells us, for how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, husband, whether you'll save your wife? If you have a husband, you know, if you're, you know, I don't think any husbands are listening to this, but if they are, and your wife's not a believer and you are, you know, or vice versa, you don't know. You absolutely can be the one that does lead them to Jesus through your conduct, as Peter tells us. So, you know, just hopefully that is some encouragement to just keep going, no matter the circumstance, no matter how hard. It's not going to be easy. Don't expect to be coddled or to have anybody feel bad for you, because it's not going to happen. It's a battle. That's why this is difficult. I mean, Jesus promised us that we will have these types of battles, and you just have to remember that your battle's not with flesh and blood. It's with spiritual forces. You know, it's far deeper than you think. So just keep going, and you know, you'll go, and maybe your husband will be the one that wants to join seminary and get an education eventually.
And it's that right there. I glanced at comments real quick earlier today when I was looking for something, and I saw somebody who said that she was doing the things, and after 43 years she gave up and walked out on her marriage. And I haven't even responded to her yet, because I just went, I did that. How do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? And my mom has shared before, in her, like, she did my biblical womanhood study. I think the second year I did it. And she called me like crying one morning, because and literally called my dad, because her and my dad, my brother's like our dad, they divorced when we were young. And she called him and apologized to him, and totally threw him off. But she called him and she apologized for giving up on their marriage, because my dad is still an unbeliever. He has questions and things, but he's still, you know,
that's an interesting,
and it really tore my mom up. And she asked to pray with him and talk to them, because she was like, if I would have trusted God, not that you're trusting your husband, but if she would have stayed, and if she would have trusted God at his word, at what he says, could you imagine what our lives would have been like if my dad did come to a saving knowledge of the Lord, if we weren't a broken family, if we didn't, you know, go through it, and whatever, where we go through the trials we go through, we are where we are, like, nobody's holding it. You know, we get told by mom, like, nobody's holding it against you. But that really did eat her up, to the point that she literally called her ex-husband and said, I'm so sorry that I didn't trust God enough and I gave up. Please, like, I want to see you in heaven. I want to see you come to a saving knowledge of the Lord. because that is so big. And so it made my heart literally sink when I saw that lady's comment. I just wanted to like hug her and cry and pray like all at the same time, because it was like, no, I know, but we can't give up. I mean, you can't, you don't control him. Like it's not like stay in until the clock runs out and you win the prize, but don't give up.
Yeah, no, don't give up. And I mean, and just be careful, be that light, like, Sabrina, you mentioned, but you need to work on yourself first and take your focus off of trying to think that you're holier than your husband and you're going to be your husband's savior, because you're not. You're only going to make things worse. That's the only thing that you can do. So if you work on yourself and you continue to have that strength and that faith, I think that there's an absolute promise in there that, certainly the Lord will work on hearts and can change the hardest heart. I mean, there's nothing that he can't do. So in order to give up after 40 years and go, man, you tried for 40 years and then you gave up. I mean, you did this for 40 years. You put in that much work. It's like getting a painting 99% finished and, I'm done. No, keep going, because you don't know at what point this is going to change. As you said, no, it's definitely the Holy Spirit. And it's
what if it was year 44 and you quit at 43?
The salvation, we don't have anything to do with the salvation process. We can't hinder it. We can't. It's impossible. Why? Because God does throughout the whole thing. He does it. It's on his timing. And there's nothing that we can do about that. When that happens, you don't know. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen 20 years from now. It could happen on your husband's deathbed. You don't know. Does it matter? Yes, you've lived a difficult life and it's been hard. So yes, it would have been preferable not to be there. But
receive crowns for
but
what
it doesn't
you did.
matter. I mean, at the end, and yes, we will. This is not a question. I know we're going over time, but yes, we will know each other in heaven. No, we won't have human relationships like we do here. I won't have a need for my wife, but that still doesn't mean that I won't have my wife in the way of this was my partner throughout this time on earth. Now there's no need for this ceremony of human beings to be married, and there's no need for all of that, because
I'll still be mean. You'll still be you.
I'll still be mean. We'll still be you, and we'll still know that we went through this life together. So, there's no reason why, you wouldn't be with your husband in heaven. Is he going to be your husband as you know him here on earth? No, because there's certain things that are going to be different. However, don't follow this belief that you're just not going to know who your husband is and what am I going to do? But I want to be with my wife. I want to be with my husband. Don't worry about it. You will. I mean, you really think that Sarah and Abraham aren't together up there? You really think that Adam and Eve are?
I just love that we're going to stand before the Lord and give an account for every careless word we've ever spoken. But yet I'm not going to remember my kids or my husband or friends or whatever. I'm like, so I'm going to give an account for every careless word I've spoken. I get comments on some of these old videos and I'm like, I don't know what I said. Like that was a video that I put together, I planned for, like I thoughtfully did a year ago. No clue what I said. No clue. I mean, I can make guesses, but I don't know what I said. But you're telling me that when I get to heaven, I'm going to give an account to God for every careless word I've ever spoken.
A lot of stupid things.
My memory is obviously going to be far better than it is today, because
and an account is not judgment. So that's not what you're saying.
Just
an account is not judgment.
But you're telling me that I'm going to have no clue who this guy is?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not what scripture says. And Jesus is simply answering questions that the religious leaders came to him with to try to trap him and try to test him. So his answer was not something that we can take.
Answering to people who don't believe in the resurrection of the dead.
Yeah, exactly. Insane.
Different topic, I know.
Different topic. Yeah, we'll get into there, but don't worry.
She's like, great, you just created 10 new.
Well, good. I mean, maybe we could have part 2, part 3.
I really agree. I think we should do multiple parts of this.
I think this is the least amount of questions in a Q&A that we've ever gotten through, huh? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What did we get?
We got big. But we did kind of like combine a couple questions.
This is one of those topics that are like universal. If you are a wife, you deal with the issue of, is my husband an actual believer? Because you can't, it's not you can't see the graph. My husband, he's right here.
Yeah.
You don't have that, so you don't know. And so I think that every wife believer has the question, how do I deal with it if he's not saved? What steps do I take? How do I help our family? When I heard you talking about Heidi, that you take over the nightly prayer, sometimes I saw it like the substitute teacher. Excuse me, Mrs. Arnold doesn't pray. And you're like, I am not Mrs. Arnold. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get it wrong, y'all. But like, that's how I saw it, because they're so accustomed to the way that Dad does it that like anybody messing with it messes them up. So
that's like the most accurate. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I see when you guys talk, I see pictures in my head, and I'm like, that's what I see. I see the teachers, and like, that's not right.
Yeah. And when you're getting judged by like your 5-year-old and your 18-year-old, and you're like,
I thought I was praying. Okay. I'm sorry. It's not up to
I'm
your
sorry for falling asleep.
Should be.
It's been a while. I should
like
be.
Very few and far between.
We just talked in the beginning of this how tired I am because of your projects and everything that you keep me busy with. So.
Okay, so I had one thing to add before everything finishes, and it has to deal with being tired and such knots. You guys talked about how somebody asked about their husband's mental health and what part do they take over and when it's acceptable and that kind of like, where's the line? Okay. I have health problems. I got a couple of problems that render me useless. Just wiped out, useless. My husband, his job is not to do housekeeping. It's not to take over dinners. It's not to cook. These are not his jobs. He can do them, but it is not his job. He's the breadwinner. This is the roles that we have taken in our household. So when I am lacking because I cannot do my God-given duty of keeping up with the household, I am seriously lacking, but it's not because I'm not trying. I'm just lacking. If something like that happens, it would be the worst thing for my husband to sit there and judge me because I couldn't do it. That would make me feel so much shame, and I would have no desire to want to do that thing. So if that thing were reading the Bible and you are shaming your husband because he is not up to snuff, you might be creating this.
It's a great point.
This really sore spot that becomes this like burden that you never meant to inject on them, but you could be doing that. And because God gave you a spouse, a husband or a wife, you are then a team. And if my husband were purposefully just neglecting the household, he saw that I was having a genuine problem. He ignored everything. He's not doing a good job as a team member. As a team member, he's failing. Just as like if I'm not supporting my husband in reading and doing the leadership and doing what he can, and then if he's not taking the kids to church, if he's not praying with them, I'm stepping up and doing that. Just like my husband steps up and does some housework sometimes. And then when he feels up to it, I say, oh, you're right. I'm done. I'm thank you so much for getting better and feeling up to it now. I really, really appreciate you taking over the substitute role that I had. And I just was using it for a moment, but like, it's your role. Thank you for doing it while I was unable to. I do it as a team, and God gave you a team. And Why are you letting your teammate fail? Like, step up and take your kids to church. Let your teammate get better, work on himself while you're getting better, and you're still pushing your team forward. Your family is a team. Push your team forward. Push them the way they're supposed to be going. Even if the guy in the back is like being drug along a little bit, like that's how you do it. And then once he becomes up with you, it just works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a big part of it too. Like, I think as women, we kind of have this, we get all Pinteresty on things. So we have this, like, this is what Bible time looks like. This is what our home looks like. And then dad comes in and he's like, I'm never going to be able to hit those. This all sounds like the dumbest thing ever to me. I guess I'll just peace out because you've got it handled. Like, that's where that void comes in too, of like,
yes,
Brandon's, okay, we have the Heavenly Minded Homeschool Family Bible Curriculum. That's what my Bible time with the kids looks like. Anybody who's seen how we do that, we got a booklet, there's pretty colors, I got pictures, there's like all the little things, right? Brandon's time with the kids has no custom-made booklets, no coloring, like there's none of those things. And you know what's funny is I hear more, not that the kids don't enjoy what they do with each of us, but if my kids had to pick, if you went out there right now and said, okay, you can only do one, which one do you want to do? I will bet you money that all of our kids would pick to sit down and do Bible with dad over doing the really cool put together stuff that I do. Not that they don't learn from it and they don't enjoy it and we don't have our things, but if they had to pick one, I guarantee you they would pick with their dad. And there's always that saying that said is there's I don't know what's happening behind us. And I know we have to wrap this up, but there's such a big difference between, we haven't fed our kids yet. There's such a big difference between a godly father, and not that our role is lesser, but the impact of having a godly father. And so I think that as the wives and moms should make us even more focused on the reality of how important this is, on the importance of walking this out, being encouraging, leaving voids, like all of these factors in whatever situation you're in, because it's constantly changing. So you're constantly adjusting and maneuvering. But this is so huge that, number one, we get the blessing because then we have a better marriage. We have a better family, like all of these things. We love being together now. Don't think I would have said the same things, 20 years ago. But look at what that has done. And then you look at the eternal, that like heavenly minded perspective of it. The crowns we'll receive, we'll be there together. Like, I mean, there's so many amazing things then that it's like, that's why this is a big deal. Guess what? Your husband might really stink. He might be an awful person. Guess what? You might not be so hot yourself, but God, right? You let that work and let that grow. And it's like a whole new world. Like we say that all the time. I tell him all the time, I'm like, you are my favorite person, but you're my favorite person now. You were not my favorite person 15 years ago. It's
interesting too, and I'll end with this, but I never felt respected then either. Not in a bad way. Not like you were intentionally doing it, but it goes back to that submissive nature of it with, being careful with how you approach this and everything, because he needs to be, as Sabrina was saying, he needs to be built up. He needs to be, there needs to be a lot of understanding that happens here.
Most of our husbands didn't come from godly, amazing homes with good examples of how to do this. And we need to give them some grace in that. I
didn't have a clue. It wasn't until I started doing this that even I knew what any of this was. So
just saying, online, how many more videos are geared towards biblical womanhood than biblical manhood?
Yeah.
I am all the time for biblical manhood series. They don't exist.
Just throwing this out there. I think that there are quite a few more godly examples of women who show themselves on the internet, who show how to, they teach other women, where men want to do it. This is so stereotyping, but men want to do it more in person. That's how I feel. I feel like my husband would totally do this more in person than online. And
yeah, it's difficult. But I mean, even too, you go into any church And it's usually the women far outweigh the men. And that just kind of shows where we are, I think, today in society. And that's just really sad. And I know that's what we deal with consistently. I can't,
churches,
I mean, it's
trying to get the men in there is so difficult.
It's so difficult. But you know, you hear the same thing though. I can't get my husband to regular church. I can't get, so it's difficult, but keep going. I mean, keep going, keep trying. And I know we'll address this issue even more in the future.
Yeah. So if you guys have any additional questions or something that we've opened up and talked to, just leave us a comment down below. And again, just put those little coffee cup emojis, and so that way we know that you guys want to hear us answer them in these Q&As. I'm really excited because obviously having Sabrina and Brandon, having us all here is the team is really exciting. We're going to be doing show and tell videos all throughout the month of September. So Sabrina and I are going through the comments and looking at all of the questions you guys have asked to literally, I have it right here, plan out the content calendar of what things we can go into more detail, literally show, talk more about. So ask your questions on any of the videos, and we're trying to work these in there. And we're also going to be offering, we love doing these Q&As. We can get more into this in a different video, but we have the collective. That's our membership group where you guys are so amazing. We've got we have so many series in there. I mean, you guys, you see everything you see publicly on YouTube. We put out a video a day. It's a lot of stuff, but you see everything you see here. We have a whole nother world of stuff that you don't even see unless you're over on that side. And so we've got amazing studies. We've got really cool stuff coming up, but we're also going to start doing live Q&As because these are fun. We all, the three of us now, have a blast doing these. But it's even more fun, I think, when you guys can watch live and comment along as we go. I know I'll be listening to Q&As and I'm like, ooh, but what about? Or ooh, you have that point to interject or that follow-up question to.
It's this.
Yes.
You want people to give you a live version of what I do and talk with you guys.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, come on, people, let's do this.
Right.
So when you guys come over and join us in the collective, we are going to be doing live Q&As in there. That just gives us a space to really connect just a lot closer. It's fun. You guys get to watch me all the time, but I want to connect with you guys. I want to hear your things and talk with you. And so we're going to be rolling those out as well. We'll link all the things and all of that, but super duper excited to get going with that here in the new month coming up. So thank you, honey, for coming in and doing this. He's going to go now cook us all dinner. And I'm going to go talk to our son about the desk that's taking over our entire bedroom so that we can actually have a bedroom tonight, or we'll be sleeping on the couch. And thank you, Sabrina, for pulling all of this together for us.
Yes, pulling.
So anyways, thank you all for hanging out with us, and we will see you all next week. Bye. Guys.